Just wanted to say a quick thank you to all members of the Kinetic Rugby League channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you'd like to become a member and support the work that I do, you can do by clicking the join button below this video and joining for as little as £1 per month. Thank you again for your support. Now let's get on with the video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kinetic Rugby League channel. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my Super League Round 21 predictions. I've left a recap of last round's predictions up on the screen for you guys to check out. I'm okay with it. I am okay with how last round went, but I'm still waiting on another 6 out of 6. And with a couple of pretty decent games on this week, I might struggle to hit that. So let's get on with the first game of this round. Kicking things off this week, we have the Leigh Leopards taking on the Leeds Rhinos. Starting with form, Leigh have won 4 in their last 5 games, winning 4 in a row, and Leeds have won 3 in their last 5 games. Now these sides met 5 rounds ago when Leeds took the win 48-30. Since then, both have been on quite a tough run. I do think Leeds been on the more difficult run. If you look at the strength of opponents, Leigh have been on the tougher run and they've won those 4 games in a row. So credit to them. I think Leigh have also looked like the better side, as well as not just picking up the wins, but they've looked like the better side as well in terms of their actual performances in both offense and defense. There are a few matchups that look really good in this one that could be deciding factors. So the first one's quite broad. It's just the forwards. Okay, it's a very broad area, but the forwards is a big matchup. When they last played, the meters were fairly even across the board. There was a lot of players in the backs for both sides that obviously helped to contribute to the overall meters. But in terms of meters through the middle, with from the forwards, it was pretty even across the board, I would say. But it did lean slightly in favour of Leeds overall for all players in terms of meters. So up front, you've got the size and power of the Leeds pack, and then you've got the size and speed, mobility of the Leigh pack. So it's an interesting battle. I'm kind of looking at it as post-contact meters versus offloads. Leeds are going to be looking to get those extra meters after the contact. Leigh's going to be looking to get the offloads because they can do. They're a little bit more mobile, tricky to kind of get a hold of and wrap up. You got players like Leigh, Offengawi especially, doing a great job with their post-contact meters actually, and Trout as well. But getting offloads as well will be huge to create those second phases. So that's one area, is the forwards. And in terms of who I'd lean it towards, I have a feeling that up front it suits Leeds a little bit more because I think they're slightly more capable of slowing down the ruck and restricting progress through the middle. I think they're slightly more capable of that. But it just depends if Leigh can get offload after offload after offload to get that defensive line of Leeds Rhinos out of shape a little bit and maybe get some more meters on those second phases. The second area are the battles in the centres. So you're looking at Hanley plus Newman for Leeds taking on Niu and Hanley. For me, this leans slightly in favour of Leigh on this one. What I like for both is that all 4 of those players are given freedom. If they want to try something, they've got the freedom to just go for it. If they see a bit of space, they'll have a go. We see Hanley and Newman like to cut in a lot and see if the middles are disrupted a little bit. But because Leigh's forwards are quite mobile, it's probably harder to get them disrupted because they can move and slot back into places, not a bunch of massive forwards that are just kind of jogging around or walking around and not getting back when they need to. The forwards for Leigh, they work hard in getting back and they can shift, they can move, so they're a lot harder to get kind of out of shape in the midfield. But for me, I'm looking at the power, the carries, the hits from Niu versus it would be Newman over on the left-hand side for Leigh. I think Niu in, say, 1v1 situations, I think could get the win there. And over on the right-hand side for Leigh, Hanley versus Handley. I should probably just include the first names as well. That would be easier. But for me, Umaila Hanley's defence has been solid this year. Ash Handley offensively has done a great job at getting around the outside of players and defenders, fending players off, cutting back inside like with Newman, trying to see if the middles are disrupted. But Umaila Hanley's done such a great job of wrapping up attackers straight away and shutting those down. And in possession, Umaila Hanley's also been creating opportunities as well. So for me, the forwards leans towards Leeds because I think they're more likely to slow the progress of Leigh down throughout this game. And then it's the centres for Leigh that I think can be the difference makers out wide, as long as the forwards for Leigh are competing well enough through the middle, which I think they can do. I just have slightly more faith in Leeds overall. But I think it's kind of helped by the individual battles that could be won out wide for Leigh, gaining extra metres or finding line breaks, or just carries out the backfield as well, or even inside the red zone, creating an opportunity, which both Niu and Hanley can do inside, short range efforts. So they're the two biggest and most important matchups for me. And finally in this one, both spines look really cohesive at the moment. Both teams kick fairly well. They chase pretty well off the back of it. On top of that, I just think I would lean slightly more towards Leigh because I think their spine's cohesion has looked more effective offensively. Even though Leeds defensively are a really solid side, I think we've seen so many great defensive efforts from Leigh over the past few weeks, and their spine looks a little bit more cohesive and slightly better in terms of production. So I think I'm going to lean towards Leigh in this one and go with Leigh Leopards 24, Leeds Rhinos 18. Next up, we have the Warrington Wolves taking on the Wigan Warriors. Starting with form, Warrington have won 3 in their last 5. Wigan have also won 3 in their last 5. First bit of news, well, it's not really news, it's more of a rumour really. There's some stuff going on with Matt Duffy apparently. I've got no idea whether that's true or not. Some people saying that he's been dropped, he's not going to play this week, or that the club's going to get rid of him. Honestly, it's all rumours, it's all noise. I don't have a shred of evidence. I don't think anyone does. I don't know what the hell's going on. Just to put that out there though, maybe there's something to it and Duffy might not play this week. That's just the only thing I can really tell you. Now, both sides have been quite inconsistent recently, showing up and then not showing up the following week, but then showing up again the week after that. So there's a bit of inconsistency to both sides. I do think, though, Wigan have been the better performers. They've had the higher highs. They've had less of the major lows. They've looked like the more dangerous side overall. There's still, I think with the inconsistency of Warrington, we still see a lot of the issues offensively and a lot of the vulnerabilities defensively as well. Whereas with Wigan, yes, they'll have lapses of concentration, slightly low energy. We still see the kind of suffocating they can do as a forward pack, the kind of processes they go through offensively, going down that left-hand side, kicking towards the back left from Harry Smith and building sets off the back of that and building pressure. When they can move the ball with Smith, with Field, and with what Jack Farman's been doing recently, we see elements of Wigan, the Wigan that, we've kind of feared a few months ago and the start of the season and last year as well. They're not that kind of side right now, but I think we've seen a lot more elements of that fearful Wigan from last year and earlier on in this season, whereas with Warrington, there's still inconsistencies. I will reiterate a point that I made last week against Leigh, or for my predictions video, that Warrington can show up for the big games, and this is another big game. Warrington did have a really solid, let's say, hour, roughly, give or take a few minutes either side, roughly a decent hour, but just looking really tired and just not very sharp mentally at the end of it. I think with the kicking game, the kick chase, just doing the basics well in the final quarter of the game just would have helped to see it out. And just a few sloppy moments moving the ball around, and that's something that Warrington really need to clean up. A major positive for Warrington is, even though there's some issues with this, there's actually a few positives with player availability. There's a full-strength spine, so again, we'll see what happens with Matt Duffy, but there's possibly a full-strength spine with Duffy, with Williams, with Sneed, and with Walker. I'm trying to think, and I've been trying to think, if there's been a single game where they've all played together this year. And I actually don't think they have. Of course, against Leigh, they were. So that was the first game. It's possible they've played together before this year. But I'm really struggling to think of when that's happened. So hopefully, with the best 4 available in the spine, they've had 80 minutes under the belts together where they looked somewhat comfortable. Danny Walker's getting more fitness off the back of his injury. And then there's Matteson on top of it as well, who looked like a pretty solid addition to that side, whether it be with his carries or looking quite comfortable shifting the ball as well. He's going to get more reps in training to hopefully look more comfortable in this side as well. And then we get to the negatives, which will be what's Warrington going to look like in the back line. Connor Wrench failed a HIA early on against Leigh. So I think it was Ben Curry that went to centres and Sam Stone was still in the back row. I think that's how we changed things. So I'm assuming Zach Gardner's going to get some game time, who, when he played his debut against Catalans a few weeks back, looked quite exciting. Really got stuck in. Showed a lot of effort when trying to carry the ball. A lot of decent moments with eyes up rugby, scoring a try on debut as well, and defensively put his body on the line when he could do. You know, really trying to smash into players, maybe a little bit reckless at times, and kind of getting away from the defensive structure just to go and hit someone because he wants to make an impression. But if he's given another opportunity with some changes in the back line, I think he could do a pretty solid job. But with Wigan, the major positives for them, first of all, they're forwards. They are bigger up front. There's more impact off the bench as well. They know how to slow down the ruck. So the three major things I talk about with forwards, I think Wigan are more likely to get more post-contact meters. They're more likely to get quicker play the balls, more likely to get more offloads. And that just adds up over 80 minutes. Dragging players an extra 3 or 4 meters when they've already made 10 most likely from the carries from Mago or Dupree or Walters when he's played previously, or what we're seeing from Hill as well. He's looking good. So there's the post-contact meters, there's the offloads that they get. Warrington have had a big issue with allowing a lot of forwards to get easy offloads. They'll commit 3, sometimes 4 defenders to a tackle, and there's still an offload. So that's something Warrington need to slow down, at least the extra meters, the offloads, or the quick play the balls. Wigan do a great job. I think the one that they sort of succeed with the most is probably quick play the balls. So as long as Warrington can slow down at least one of the other two, it's going to be a huge help. But Wigan, I think, could be relatively fine through the middle in those areas. I think with the back and forth grind as well, that's going to suit Wigan. If we get into a back and forth grind, kicking towards the corners, returning the ball, I feel like the backs of Wigan, they have better production out the backfield as well, and therefore are less likely to get trapped. So I think if it's a back and forth game, it's going to suit Wigan more. If Warrington do try and chuck the ball around the midfield, they're just going to make sure they actually complete those sets and not give away, easy possession in the midfield. I can see Warrington really pushing Wigan in this game. I think Wigan will look mostly comfortable, but I just have a feeling Warrington will play up to the occasion, will kind of just be on their heels here and there, come up with a couple tries, maybe take a lead at some point. But I just think, given the size, given the speed, the individual quality, Wigan have been looking like the better performers in recent weeks and look more capable of an 80-minute display compared to Warrington. So for prediction, I'm going to go with Warrington Wolves 16, Wigan Warriors 24. Next up, we have Wakefield Trinity taking on St Helens. Start with form, Wakefield have won 3 in their last 5. Saints have won 4 in their last 5. I think a major element of this game to consider will be Saints kicking and kick chase. There'll be a lot of people in the media, a lot of people on different social media platforms. I've talked about these kind of things before, in that we talk about Saints attack in a negative light and Saints defense in a positive light, which are things I'll get onto in this. But something that I think could be a major game changer in this one is Saints kicking. I think it's gone under the radar over the last few weeks, possibly months at this point. We'll see Moses Mbai when he's playing in the 7 role. I think he steadies the ship. I don't know what Saints fans think of him, and if there's Saints fans watching, do let me know your thoughts on him, because I'm actually kind of curious what Saints fans think of Mbai. But whenever I see him play, I feel like he's the instigator. He kind of gets things going with speed, whether it be the first receiver, then drawing defenders in, getting that ball out the back, or whether he's controlling the kicking game. I think Mbai is a very valuable asset to St Helens, and with that kicking game, there are a few moments where some of the kicks are a bit skew-if. They can go out on the full. There's been a couple of times, might not just be him, but there's some that have gone over the dead ball line. Again, might not just be him as well. But some of the kicks that he's produced, they've been pinpoint. players have, like, the back three receivers have been collecting the ball inside the in-goal area. They've sometimes been tackled in goal or starting fresh sets meters in front of the try line or getting players really pinned into the corners for a handover. The kicking from Moses Mbai has been solid, and some of the kicks from Lomax as well on top of it. But then the kick chase from Saints. They're really nailing that, I think, in recent weeks. The kicks, first of all, need to be accurate, well weighted, well positioned, which they're kind of doing. But then you're seeing just a wall of white and red shirts appear on screen, and they're just locking teams down into corners. And I think Saints could really do that against Wakefield this week. Now, a negative for Saints, so just to stay on Saints a little bit longer before I switch over, Saints' completion rate against Cass was 62%. That's from the Super League website. It sounds unbelievable. It's directly from the Super League website, and it says their completion rate was 62%. I almost don't believe it, but I'll just take their word for it. If they do that against Wakefield, they will punish them, and I'll go into that with Wakefield in a bit. The positive counter to that, if they are gifting field position to Wakefield, is that Saints' defence has been incredible this season. They've had some games where there's been lapses, they've not been perfect. There was a period a few months ago where they just looked off it as a team all throughout. But over the last few weeks and last recent months as well, their defence has been fantastic. There's been 3 games in the last 5, I think they've conceded 0. There was Cass, Leeds and Salford. You can say what you like about Salford, but to at least not concede is a tall task. And then against Leeds as well. And then against Cass, that have been improving offensively and do have some strike in their side here and there. But Saints have looked like a really, really strong defensive side. So even if they have to deal with a lot of pressure from Wakey, they do appear to be strong enough to withstand a lot of that pressure for the full 80 minutes. I do think Wakefield, though, if they are receiving the ball inside the midfield, or if they're able to work the ball up the field as well with just the carries, kicking, building pressure, their speed is going to be huge, because I don't think they're going to find it. I don't think they're going to find points through the middle with like crashing over with, say, Fartilli or Pitts, these kind of guys through the middle. I don't think Saints will allow that. I think they're too reliable, too steady through the middle. So if you want to beat Saints, you've got to play with pace, which Wakefield do for starters. There have been some times where they've been a little bit too erratic inside the red zone. They don't like playing with limited space when the Saints, or when any defensive line can really press up. So they can get disrupted a little bit when trying to move the ball around. But if Wakefield can execute with pace, that's going to be something that could start to open up St. Helens, but it's going to be very, very difficult to do. And again, with what I've said about Saints, with their kick, the kick chase and building pressure, I don't know how many chances Wakefield will actually get inside the red zone. So I think Wakey might have to move the ball around a lot in the midfield to get those long-range efforts in. I think that's actually going to be their best bet, just going for long-range efforts, but not forcing it. If they see that the space is there, if they've got the numbers, if they like what they see, then obviously go for it, but not forcing it. I think that's something that Wakefield have been guilty of a little bit earlier in the season. They're a bit raw, forcing things a bit, whilst trying to be expansive and creative, which I've loved about them this year. But recently they've been a little bit more clean and clinical and a bit more patient in how they sort of go about that. I think this will be quite a back and forth game. It'll kind of have a grand final type feel where it is going back and forth, because they'll want to try and set a tone. I do like the forwards of Wakefield. I think they can put up a good fight, but I think the kicking and then the size of Saints and the process they've been going through recently and how well they've been competing in the back and forth, I think Saints might win in that area. Plus their defence has been so strong over the last few weeks and months, and I just think even with the deficits that they could have offensively, that's St. Helens, I think their defence is so good. And they will still find points as well. They'll still find points, because you look at the excitement, the energy they had against Cass. Yes, Cass defensively aren't great, but there's clear signs of improvement. And on an individual level, you got guys like Robertson, you got guys like Felt, or Lomax, or Mbai, or Sailor, Wormsley with his carries through the middle that can create opportunities, and Darryl Clark as well. Gets in front of the try line, he could easily slot in for a try between the sticks. So I do think Saints have enough to get this one done. If Wakefield win this one, I would not be surprised though. I just think there's a few elements for Saints that I've gone through that just suit them a little bit more. So I'm going to go with Wakefield Trinity 14, St Helens 24. Next up, we have Hull Kingston Rovers taking on the Castleford Tigers. Starting with form, KR have won 3 in their last 5. Cass have only won 1 in their last 5. Now, these sides met 6 rounds ago, and the score was 48-0 to the Robins. Now, looking at the stats in that game, KR had significantly more possession and run meters and just more pressure inside the red zone as well. So, are these sides much different to then? I don't know. I don't think so. So, to go into KR first, I think we will likely see that dominance from 6 rounds ago replicated in this one. For a few reasons. There's 3. Number 1, the basics. I don't think any other side is better at the basics than KR. So when I say the basics, what do I mean personally? Well, I mean, first of all, completing your sets. However you go about the set, fair enough, it might just be 5 tackles and a kick. Whatever you want to do, complete your sets. Get to the kick. That's one. Then the kick itself. It's got to be placed in the right areas. If you say they go down the short side left with Mikey Lewis, he kicks from enemy territory 40. And that ball goes straight up in the air, comes down on the 20. It's a little bit of a pointless kick. But if he's getting that in front of the try line and behind the 10, if it's right in the corner, perfect. I feel like with how often KR get into that process and do the same thing, Mikey Lewis is very comfortable, and even May over on the right is very comfortable, and Morg as well, I should mention. They're very comfortable with where they're placing these kicks. They've been doing it so much, and they build their sets. They get into the grind off the back of that process. So, first of all, completing sets, then putting the kicks in the right places, and then defensive line speed needs to be good to put pressure on the ball carrier and to not allow the attack to spread the ball as well. So the defensive line speed is good from KR, and also the disciplined typically as well. So it's the completion of sets, kicks into the corners, defensive line speed, discipline in defense. Those 4 basics, they do what feels to me better than everyone else. Maybe some of those stats-wise are better for other teams, possibly. I don't know the stats and all those, but just based on the eye test, KR do those 4 things as a set of things better than anybody else. So that's going to be a huge problem for Castleford to contend with this week. And that's just number 1. Number 2, KR's ability to gain yards offensively and limit them in defence. Limiting them defensively stems from the back of the discipline and the quick defensive line speed. If you get your line up quickly, then there's less ground that the attack can make. And if you get your line up quickly, it puts more pressure and you can jam into receivers out the back when teams try and spread the ball. So that goes hand in hand with that. And making meters offensively, it feels to me like even if you can slow down their forwards' progress, and by the way, their forwards can make those post-contact meters, they can get offloads, they can get quick play the balls. Normally what you want to happen is you want to slow down the ruck as much as possible so that you can get your defensive line set. But it feels like even when teams, on some occasions when they can slow down KR's forwards and then get set defensively, KR's execution with the ball down both sides of the field is just always precise, it's always clean, it's always quick. Which means players are constantly in stride, they never have to kind of change motion or lines. They're running the same, not the same shape, but they can run the same shape. There's no variation because they have to worry about these passes going wayward and having to, stop their motions. They're always clean. They're always efficient when they move the ball, even when defenses are set. So they still know how to make meters and limit them. And then third is just overall their attack versus Castleford's defence are just 2 completely different levels. I did mention I did mention for Castleford versus Saints prediction in the last video, Castleford have been conceding less points over the last 3 weeks before that loss. So maybe this was just a blip for Cass against Saints, but I'm not sure it's that simple. But with Cass, I think there is a way to win this one. First of all, I've mentioned this many times before. Cass have this weird ability every few weeks or months to produce this godlike performance. They come out of absolutely nowhere. They've been stinking up the gaff for weeks or months, and then suddenly you back them to lose, and they turn into prime Melbourne Storm cheating the salary cap days. They'll just, out of nowhere, defensively, just be elite. Somehow. Just in a one-off game every couple of weeks or months. So if they have that kind of day, huge help. But if they don't have that kind of day, where they're just godlike defensively, they need to at least complete their sets. So getting the basics right, they need to complete their sets. The kicks need to be solid, which I think Atkin and Assey, I think their kicks have been quite solid in recent weeks, so that's huge for them. But then the kick chase needs to be, they need a solid number of players in the kick chase. They've got to be disciplined defensively. You cannot gift penalties to KR. They're already going to find it fairly easy to move the ball up the field with just simple carries through the middle. You can't just gift them penalties. You cannot gift them penalties. So they've got to complete sets and be disciplined. Then they need strong defensive or quick defensive line speed as well. I don't think we'll see that quick defensive line speed really from them. They don't seem like the type to really commit that quickly in defence. But if they can kick well, complete sets, and be disciplined, huge start. Then, in possession, when they need to be creative, something I've talked about as well with Cass, is inside their own half, they are having a go. They are chucking the ball around, usually down that left-hand side with, I think it's Lewis Senior that's been playing on the left sometimes. When they move the ball inside their own half, they're seeing the spaces, they're executing quite well, they're finding line breaks. There's great support on the inside as well, or even the outside sometimes. They've got to do that more than they normally do. And it's got to come off regularly. You can have the odd moment where you kind of mess up, but then you got to back it up inside the red zone defensively if you screw up or drop the ball. But I think the only way for Castleford to overcome KR are the basics that I mentioned, and you've got to actually keep going at them. The team that set the blueprint a few weeks back was Leeds. They kept going at them. They kept doing it again and again and again. It didn't always result in line breaks, but it put KR under a lot of pressure, and they had to really think about that. So Cass can follow that blueprint, keep moving the ball. Even if you're not making breaks, you're not making all the meters that you were hoping you would, you got to keep trusting it, keep going at them. Stretch that defence as much as possible. But with that being said, drop my pen, sorry. With that being said, I trust KR's process to complete the basics at a high enough level. I think Cass can have a few moments here and there. It could be a run from 10 metres out from Assey. It could be something from Fletcher Rooney. It could be a strong carry from one of the senior brothers. I don't know what's happening within his senior at the moment, but it could be Lewis Senior. It could be a little moment from Sim, who's got a decent step to him here and there, that could just get a couple points on the board. But over 80 minutes, I'm expecting pure dominance from the Robins. And I think we will see a lot of sets where Cass struggle to make it out of their own end. And I think kicking from their own 30, anytime Cass kick from their own 30 is probably going to be an achievement. Because I don't think they'll work the ball up the field that well. Unless they're gifted penalties and KR have an off day. But I think the Robins will be perfectly fine in this one. So for a prediction, I'm going to go with Hull Kingston Rovers 36, Castleford Tigers 6. Next up, we have the Huddersfield Giants taking on the Catalans Dragons. Start with form, Huddersfield have won 2 in their last 5. Catalans have only won 1 in their last 5. That one win for Catalans was against the Huddersfield Giants 5 rounds ago. They won 32-0. And at the time, I think most people probably would have backed Huddersfield. I know I did. I think I went with 24-18, if I remember correctly. Huddersfield were looking so much more improved. That was when they started to make their improvements and had a more consistent lineup available. And Catalans were just awful. Yet all of a sudden, 32-0 out of absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Now, going into this one, there are talking points. There's one in particular for each side. They're quite broad, so they're not too specific, but they're quite broad. I'll try and get into specifics with them. But the broad point for Catalans, which is a negative for them, they're very slow and they're very dull. Defensively to me, it just looks like they're there. They don't slow down progress. They don't make life difficult. They're just there, going through the motions. They don't look like a particularly solid defence. Sometimes it can be effective enough, but then it's the offence. They look so slow, so void of ideas. And you watch that game back, actually don't, if you've already watched the game against Wigan, don't watch it back. It would be a waste of your life. But if you were to watch that game back, the amount of disconnect that there was, moving the ball around, just wayward passes left, right and centre. They just look so clueless and lifeless. There's such a lack of energy. There's such a lack of effort. They've got some big forwards, but they're not really getting anywhere. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, it's the forwards that can set a platform for the backs. They've got big forwards. I think there's a lot of teams that, on paper, wouldn't mind if they swapped around their forwards with Catalans. On paper, based on the size that they've got. But they're not producing these sparks. The extra meters, the offloads, the quick play of the ball. Statistically, they might be pretty good in one of those areas. But off the back of it, when they can then start to try and move the ball around, there's no effectiveness. The play breaks down once they move the ball towards the edges. The play breaks down 7 or 8 out of 10 times. And that's it. It's done. And then just rinse and repeat. Back towards the middle, taking carries. Kicks towards the corners. And some of those kicks are just not very effective. They'll kick from the halfway line and it'll end up on the 20 or the 30. It's not right into the corners where they need it to be. Some of the kicks are awful. Some of the execution at the end of sets is just not good enough. They look dull and slow, unimaginative, and just sometimes garbage in possession. So it was a broad point, but hopefully I've been fairly specific on that one. With Huddersfield, though, the very broad point that's a positive for them are their starts. Even though in the last 4 weeks, so the 4 games after the loss to Catalans, they had, I think it was a loss, win, loss. Or possibly the other way around. Sorry, it was win, loss, win. There you go. In those 4 games, even when they lost comfortably to Wigan and got battered by Wakefield, you take the 2 wins either side of those losses as well, all 4 of those games, what did Huddersfield do? They started very, very well. Very, very well. The 2 losses, they didn't work out. They kind of chucked those away, and they did that to start the season as well. But Huddersfield, they know how to start a game. Honestly, they might be one of the best in the league when it comes to starting, trying to set the tone, set the tempo. Huddersfield might be one of the best teams in the league at doing that, at starting games. They know how to do it. They just got to keep it up, because the game is 80 minutes long. It's not 10 minutes, in case they didn't know. So if they can just do that, 7 more times, they'll be sorted. But they do need to keep it up. Both of these sides do have big packs on paper. I've already talked about Catalans. But for me, Huddersfield, they look a little bit more mobile. I think they've been more effective dragging multiple defenders. And there's a few that have been I mean, they've been underrated in general up front, but you've got the likes of Wilson and English. I think they've looked really solid. Golding, whether he's taking carries or shifting the ball in that loose forward position, or Cudjoe the same as well. But Greenwood, I think Greenwood has gone really under the radar, and he's quite a threatening option to go to inside the red zone, especially in front of the try line. You just get that flat pass across to Greenwood, he can crash over. Some of it, the lines he's been running, the defenders in the line, either the 4-man in, the 3-man in that he's targeting with the lines, he can just break through. Or he can, get wrapped up by a few defenders but crash over the line. I think Greenwood is a real solid player for Huddersfield this year, and has gone under the radar. I think could possibly get himself a try, maybe even 2 this week, but I think could get himself a try. So with this game, I expect the Giants to start well. I expect points possibly in the first 10 minutes, possibly even 5 minutes. It's then continuing that. And I think learning from the lesson of the last game, they'll know more details, more specifics about what they didn't do correctly against Catalans, and they'll fix some of those specific things that I'm not smart enough or understand the game well enough to know the really fine details. So hopefully they'll fix in a lot of those areas. And defensively, hopefully they'll be a little bit more stout this week. I think the forwards being mobile can help with the back and forth. I think the sparks that we see from either Flanagan or Gagai, the stability that Frawley brings, or Wolford getting more reps and more game time at 9, the impact that Golding can have, or that Burgess, Wilson, English, whatever combination they want to do, whoever wants to start in the front row or whoever they want to bring on, the forwards can set a platform. And then Lollahea. He's just gone way under the radar. He's been getting a little bit more praise recently, but he has been really, really important for Huddersfield recently. In terms of finding points, looking creative, not looking dull, not looking predictable. Tui Lollahea, I think, has been a really important piece for the Giants. And I just think with the size they've got, the mobility, the lessons they'll learn, the cohesion they're now building with Flanagan, Lollahea, Frawley, who has been looking really settled in that side, and Wolford. The backs as well. I think the back lines looked relatively consistent over the last few weeks, I think, as well. And the forwards, as I say, are carrying the ball extremely well. I think Huddersfield can get revenge this week. And thinking about a scoreline, I am going to go with exactly what I predicted last time round. So for a prediction, I'm going to go with Huddersfield Giants 24, Catalans Dragons 18. Finally for this round, we have Hull FC taking on Salford Red Devils. Starting with form, FC have won 2 in their last 5. Salford have only won 1 in their last 5. So again, Salford could be in another tricky position, let's call it. I'm not sure what the state is going to be for Salford in this one. I'm not too sure. I believe they'll be losing a couple players this week. Hill is on his way to Bradford. I think, was Murphy out somewhere? Hankinson has left, I think. And there was one other, I can't quite remember. So not only are players leaving, I don't know what kind of lineup they're going to have. So even if they would have had some regulars, some of the regulars are also leaving. I will assume that Salford have a lineup somewhat similar to last round. Something like that, with a few regular pieces in there. Morgan, Lewis, Briley. Briley will probably play, the rest of his career at Salford, to be honest. I think he loves it there, so honestly, fair play to him. Connell, I think might play again. Whitehead will get some more game time, which is good for him. Sangare, possibly. The Ormonroyd has been, I think, ever present. So I'm not 100% sure, but I will assume, for the sake of argument, for a balance, it's roughly the same as last round. But Salford have made minor improvements here and there, mainly when they've had their strongest side available, even with all these things going on. The carries through the middle are a little bit better. The kicks are a little bit better. Defensively, they can find a bit more resilience because they always play with energy. I mentioned that in the Power Rankings video yesterday, and I've talked about this before. Regardless of who's playing for Salford, there's always energy, there's always effort. You can never, ever fault their effort. Sometimes it's just the quality. Difference in quality and experience is, the major difference. But the effort is always there for Salford. And that's what the fans want. And they appreciate and respect that. But in the last game against KR, the carries were very ineffective. The kicking game was, and I'm being very kind in my wording when I say this, it was not good. And I want to be kind in how I say that because it was Morgan that was on most of the kicking. The kicks were not good. It doesn't help that Salford couldn't really make the meters, but the kicks, there wasn't really any distance on it. And we saw literally from the opening set, Salford couldn't get anywhere. Morgan kicks it, Morg catches it on the halfway line, and then KR score. And that persisted throughout the game. Not the resulting in a try, but the kicks just didn't do anything. And I've got a feeling that could just be the exact same problem for Salford this week. And if you're then gifting the ball in the midfield to FC because you can't work the ball out your own end, the backs don't have to worry about making meters to work the ball out their own end to get out of trouble. And then the forwards are taking carries inside Salford's territory, sometimes inside the red zone. I think for a lot of this game, FC could look quite fresh and not have to worry too much about field position in a back and forth kicking battle. Even though FC were very disappointing, the 2 wins they picked up prior to the loss were very, very much improved, very clinical, much more professional performances. And then that F against Huddersfield was just so disappointing, a little bit lethargic. I don't know if they got away from their process of the previous weeks. I don't know if they did anything differently. They just didn't look the same. They lacked a bit of energy and they looked a bit slower. It was quite disappointing, honestly, because I did back Hull FC to win that one. This week, I do expect their forwards to dominate. I just think, as much as I hate talking about this for Salford, you got Knight, you got SASA, you got SA, Ashworth, Aiden. I think was Leigh coming back? I'm not too sure. Cartwright's been back. Fash is in there as well. LaFash. The forwards should dominate. There should be a lot of offloads as well. There could be a couple breaks through the middle. If you get 3 or even 4 defenders onto Herman SASA, or even Knight, they can get their arms free still and get offloads, and then there's breaks through the middle. And that's just going to be even more devastating than what this game already could be. But yeah, I think Salford's kicking is going to be a major issue again. I think Caesar will run the show. He'll be clean, he'll be clinical. I think we'll see exciting moments from Martin. We'll see moments from Barron, like aerial threat in the back right corner. I think the forwards will look pretty comfortable. I think Knight over the past few weeks has actually improved in his performances in recent weeks, sometimes playing in that loose forward position to help spread the ball, or just taking carries. I think his performances have really improved. So yeah, FC should be fine through the middle. As long as they play with a bit of pace, they complete sets, they don't give away stupid penalties, I think Hull FC should be fine in this one. Again, before I get into the score, assuming Salford's squad is relatively similar to what they had against KR. And it should be a bit of a mismatch in this one. If for some reason they've got a bunch of regulars available, the scoreline for Hull FC comes down a little bit. Defensively, they can have those resilient moments. But I just like what FC can do with the run game of Caesar, with the moments that Barron can produce, with the kind of dominance they can have in the ruck as well. Yeah, I don't think there's much more I can say. I wanted to give Salford like a lot of, a good chunk of time because I want to give them the respect of actually going into detail. But I think this, in terms of at least the win, should be straightforward for Hull FC. Scoreline maybe could be interesting to a degree. Maybe they concede more than I expect them to and score less than I expect. But yeah, apologies if this one was just another complete yap sesh. But I'm going to go with Hull FC 40, Salford Red Devils 6. So there you have my Super League Round 21 predictions. I just want to quickly say, if you prefer videos like this where they're a little bit longer, or a fair bit longer, going into a bit more detail, trying to expand on points a bit more, if you prefer these kinds of videos, do let me know. If you would like me to get a move on, I won't be offended. If you prefer the shorter videos, honestly, let me know your thoughts. Whatever you guys prefer, whatever the majority prefers, I'd like to please the crowd. So let me know what you prefer. These longer ones or getting a move on. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Kinetic Rugby League content. Very close to 11k subs. If there's any predictions that you've got, do let me know in the comment section down below. Also, comments do help to get the video out there as well. But if you'd like to become a member, you can do by clicking the join button below this video and joining for as little as £1 per month. But that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.